Well, here in the studio, we're joined by the leader of Belarus's opposition, Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya. Thank you for being with us here on France 24.
Thank you for inviting.
We're also in the company of our Chief International Affairs Editor, Robert Parsons. First off, Belarus was also one of those two countries that, along with Russia, that wasn't invited to this meeting that we just saw that take place in Prague. Your thoughts on the way transnational unity is going in these times?
Look, Belarusian regime and Russia, of course, shouldn't be there because they launched the war in Ukraine. But I'm sure that Belarusian democratic forces who are opposing the regime in Belarus and who are supporting Ukrainians in their fight should be on the summit. But maybe next time.
Maybe next time. Let's just paint the picture here, because Rob Parsons, again, it's this: how do you band together at the outset of winter? And you have this meeting taking place in Prague, and at the same time, on the other hand, the Saudis saying we'll cut production, we'll boost the price of oil. That's going to raise inflation here. It's going to add to that energy insecurity.
Clearly, it's going to add to energy insecurity, but there's not very much that the EU or this new political community can do about that other than continue along the path that they've been talking about at the moment.
Is it a win or a loss when Vladimir Putin looks at events unfolding on this continent?
Oh, it's clearly a loss, I think, for Vladimir Putin. His assumption right at the beginning of this conflict was that it would divide the European community, divide not just the European community, but the Western international community as a whole. On the contrary, it has quite clearly brought the West together in a way that he had not anticipated.
And we had this admission by him of losses on the battlefield.
Yeah, I mean, an admission, not a direct admission, but yet yesterday when he was talking on Russian television with Russian teachers, he spoke about we are working on the assumption, I think were the words he used, that we will turn around the difficult situation. There are two things that are interesting to my mind in that. You know, the fact that he's admitting that the situation is difficult and has to be turned around. And the second one, for me, I find extraordinary, is we're working on the assumption that they're going to be turned around. On what basis is he working on that assumption? What is, what is the battlefield telling him that gives him the basis to reach that sort of conclusion?
Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, when you think back to the events of August 2020, you running for president, you're forced into exile after those unprecedented post-electoral demonstrations in your country. At the time, Russia's the big brother. You're hearing that Russia's on the back foot now. Did you expect this?
Actually, back in 2020, we didn't think about Russia's position because our fight was absolutely internal. We fought against the dictatorship in our country. At that moment, we didn't know that maybe there were already plans of Kremlin to use Belarusian territory to invade Ukraine. So we appealed to Russian Federation, don't interfere, it's our local business. But Putin supported Lukashenko back in 2020, and it gave opportunity for Lukashenko to seize the power, to stay in the power.
So if today there's a weakened Putin, what does that mean for Lukashenko?
For sure, the victory of Ukraine, and we are sure that there will be victory, will open window of opportunities for Belarusian people again. Because weak Putin means weak Lukashenko. And Lukashenko put everything on the victory of Kremlin in this war, but this blitzkrieg failed. And now Lukashenko is very fragile. And we are preparing to use this window of opportunities that can appear in the nearest future. And I think that some other post-Soviet Union countries are preparing for this.
How are you preparing?
We are building structures. We are uniting people. We are trying to split elites and split military officers. We are united as never before. We managed to build coalition of democratic countries around us, who are supporting us in our cause. Lukashenko is not recognized as legitimate leader of Belarus. He doesn't represent Belarusian will anymore. So we we have also a so-called victory plan. It means that at one separate moment, state institutions and military institutions will be blocked, and when people will go for peaceful rallies, nobody will shoot in them.
But, if I may just throw a question to you as well, how confident are you, given the way things are developing in the conflict between this war between Russia and Ukraine, that Russia is going to end up being the loser in this conflict? The regime that has started this conflict in Ukraine is going to tumble as a consequence. Because at the moment, despite the fact that Russia is losing on the battlefield, it does appear, for the time being at least, that the regime itself seems fairly secure. Or do you think that's a false interpretation?
This fight on the battlefield can proceed no longer, but moral defeat of Kremlin has already happened. And this image of the second hugest army in the world, this image collapsed. And now the countries that are breaking this energetic ties, with Russia, it gives, insurance for people that, this dependence is step by step will be broken.
Given that, what chance do you think that within your own country that resistance to Lukashenko will grow, given the fact that they see that the man who has been backing Lukashenko for these last couple of years, Vladimir Putin, is weakening inside Russia? Does that give encouragement to the opposition inside Belarus to resist more actively?
So first of all, we have majority of people. We don't call ourselves opposition because Lukashenko is minority and his cronies. Of course, even those who are supporting Lukashenko politically, supporting him because they feel comfortable in this vertical of power, they are against the war, at least. And they also watch how the chair under Lukashenko is shaken. And for sure, when they will also see that the moment is critical, that nobody will come and save Lukashenko, they will immediately change sides.
Yeah. It's a cornered Kremlin. How dangerous is that?
Oh, for sure, it's dangerous. The decisions can be absolutely irrational as the beginning of the war. I think you are talking about use of nuclear weapon. Of course, it's extremely disturbing. Actually speaking, I don't think that Kremlin wants to be defeated. They can't lose face, and I don't know which steps they can take to be to say the last word. I even don't want to think about this.
In those opening days of the war, Russian forces going through Belarus, we remember those images of soldiers being forced to dig trenches near the radioactive forest around Chernobyl. When you talk about irrational decisions, what can we expect?
Look, what we Belarusians are concerned about is that nuclear weapon can be deployed on the territory of Belarus, because Lukashenko deliberately changed constitution to delete the paragraph about neutral status of Belarus, to have this opportunity to show loyalty to Kremlin, that there is our territory and you can deploy. And look, the Ukrainians will have right to answer to this step, I would say. So I'm not sure about Chernobyl station. Maybe there will be some acts of sabotage. I don't know, but it can be a nuclear weapon on Belarusian territory and missiles that have been launched from our territory.
Just one slightly different question. Yeah, how active at the moment is the resistance in Belarus to Lukashenko, and how active too is the participation of Belarusians in the conflict itself inside Ukraine, on the side of Ukraine?
Our resistance is alive. People are not giving up. Though, of course, you don't see beautiful big rallies on the streets, but it's because since 2020, a huge wave of repressions, tyranny, and terror take place in Belarus. But people have energy, people have strength to continue our fight. Now it's going on mostly underground. Look, for us, it also seemed that that in 2021, people were so frightened that less and less resistance, signs of resistance appeared. But the war has started, and look, the next day after the war has started, again, thousands of people on the streets. Partisans who maybe haven't even participated in the rallies 2020 made acts of sabotage on railways to slow down Russian equipment going through the country. Ordinary people made pictures and videos of Russian troops going through Belarus and informed Ukrainian side about possible attacks. Also, up to 1,500 Belarusian men are fighting in Belarusian battalion. And now they are at counteroffensive. They are releasing Liman and all those territories. And the quantity of people who would like to participate to defend Ukraine, hence defend Belarus, is growing. People are being trained at the moment.
One final question for you. On this trip, you've met with top leadership here in France. The French were criticized because Emmanuel Macron, the president, kept those channels of communication open with Vladimir Putin before and since the war started. What did you think when you sat down with the prime minister Wednesday in terms of how far in the French are?
Look, I really appreciate that there are attempts of world leaders to solve the crisis diplomatically. Because back in 2020, President Macron was the first world leader I met with, and he also wanted to at least try to solve Belarusian crisis. And this conflict is already too far away. But I think that these attempts, brave attempts of France, continue these diplomatic connections, somehow maybe to slow down or to be mediator in the negotiations. Of course, we appreciate these steps, and maybe one day France will be mediator between regime and Belarusian democratic forces.
Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, many thanks for being with us here on France 24. I want to thank as well Robert Parsons, our Chief International Affairs Editor. Stay with us. Much more to come here on France 24.